The sun of Valderus rose slowly, casting golden light over the crystal palace. The air was fresh and the world seemed peaceful for the first time in many days. The rebellion had been stopped, the people had seen the truth, and the name Daniel was now spoken with respect. Inside the palace, Queen Saravel walked along the sky bridge, her long robe flowing behind her. Her face was calm, but her mind was full. For years she had ruled with strength, tradition, and wisdom. But never had she imagined that a human and outsider would change everything. She stopped when she reached the royal garden. There she found Daniel sitting under a tree, looking at the glowing flowers. His face was thoughtful. "You've become quiet," the queen said gently. Daniel stood up and bowed slightly. "Just thinking, Your Majesty." "About?" Daniel looked up at the sky. "About what happens next." The queen nodded slowly. "That is the question, isn't it?" Later that day, a special meeting was called in the Great Hall of Union. It was not a wedding. Not yet. It was something more important, a moment of choice. The hall was filled with nobles, citizens, and leaders from other planets. All eyes were on the queen, her daughters, and the human who had surprised them all. Queen Saravel stood in the center. "Valderus has faced change, fear, doubt, but also hope," she said. "The human Daniel of Earth has passed every trial, faced danger, and earned our trust not with force but with kindness, courage, and wisdom." She turned to Daniel. "Now we ask you, what is your heart's choice?" Daniel stepped forward. He looked at Alira, then Velen, and then at Sarai. Each of them had touched his life in a different way. He took a deep breath. "I came here as a stranger. Now I stand among friends. Each of you showed me a different kind of strength, but the one who touched my heart the most was Sarai." Gasps filled the hall. Sarai looked surprised, but her eyes softened. She stepped forward slowly. Daniel continued. "Sarai reminded me that silence can be powerful, that trust is not loud, it grows in quiet moments. I don't come to take a throne or a title, I come to walk beside her. If she will have me." Sarai looked into his eyes. "Yes," she said softly, "I will." The crowd remained quiet for a moment. Then applause rose like thunder, not forced, not formal, but real. A union without a crown. Later, in a private gathering, Queen Saravel met with her daughters and Daniel. No cameras, no nobles, just family. "You could become Prince of Valderus," the queen said to Daniel. "Do you accept the title?" Daniel shook his head gently. "No, I want to live among your people, learn their ways. Build bridges, not sit on a throne." The queen smiled. "That may be the wisest answer of all." Alira raised her glass. "To change," Velen smirked. "To strange humans who don't follow the script." Sarai said softly, "To a future we choose ourselves." Back on Earth a few months later, Daniel and Sarai visited Earth together. It was her first time seeing his home. They walked along the beach, holding hands. Sarai wore Earth-style clothes and smiled at the strange sounds of birds and waves. "I never thought your world would be so open," she said. Daniel laughed. "I never thought yours would be so beautiful." They visited schools, hospitals, and science centers. Sarai listened and learned. People stared at her at first, but soon they were curious, not afraid. She spoke to children, helped build a solar panel, and even joined a small Earth Valderus cultural project. When they returned to Valderus, something had changed. Not just between them, but between worlds. A new year passed. Then another. The Pure Blood Assembly had vanished into the shadows. Their influence was gone. Most of the nobles who once feared humans now welcomed them. Earth and Valdaris had begun real cooperation, science, medicine, and even arts. Daniel continued his work as a bridge between the two worlds. Not as a king, but as a guide. Sarai became a voice of peace. She encouraged open dialogue between species and started education programs for both Valeri and humans. One evening, during a celebration of peace, Daniel stood beside Sarai as the queen handed her the starstone pendant, a symbol of leadership. "In unity, you both changed our world," the queen said. "Not with war, but with love. A message to the galaxy soon." Other alien worlds noticed the change. Some laughed at first. Others grew curious. Eventually, leaders from distant planets came to meet Daniel and Sarah. They wanted to understand how such peace was possible between such different beings. Daniel told them one simple thing. You don't need to be the same to understand each other, you just need to listen. That message traveled far through stars, through stations, through cultures. Humans were no longer seen as outsiders, they were seen as partners. Final moments years later, Daniel sat in the same garden where he first spoke with Sarai under the moons. The palace had changed, more open, full of different species. Children ran across the soft grass. Some were Valeri. Some were human, some were both. Sarai joined him on the bench. She rested her head on his shoulder. Did you ever think, she asked softly, that one order from a queen would lead to all this? Daniel smiled. No, but I'm glad she gave it. They watched the sky as the moons rose, bright and peaceful. In that moment, nothing else mattered, not crowns, not bloodlines, not planets, only the promise that had been kept, that one human with an open heart could change the stars. The palace of Valdris had changed. After Daniel completed the 3 trials, people started to talk about him in a different way. At first, many thought he was just a visitor. Now they saw him as someone with real strength, not of the body, but of the heart and mind. The queen's daughters felt it too. Each one of them had seen something unique in the human, something that no Valeri noble had ever shown. Still, the decision was not easy. Inside the queen's private chamber, the 3 daughters stood together. The queen sat calmly, her eyes serious. You've seen what he can do, she said. You've watched him face fear, solve conflict, and speak truth, but I will not force your hands. Now each of you must speak your heart. The room fell silent. Alira stepped forward first. She was the eldest, always calm and thoughtful. At first, I believed this was only about duty, she said. A political move, a strategy for peace. But after the trial of wisdom, I realized something else. He does not seek power. He only wants to help. I respect that. She looked at her sisters. If Daniel chooses me, I will not reject it. I am willing to walk beside him. Velen was next. She had been the most resistant from the beginning. I didn't trust him, she said honestly. I thought he was weak. But in the jungle, I saw how he never gave up. And during training, he didn't fight back with anger. He stood with patience. Her tone softened a little. I'm not ready to promise anything, but I no longer believe he's a joke. If he chooses me, I won't walk away. Sarai was last. She looked quiet, but her voice was clear. He listens, she said. Even in silence, when he speaks, he means it. He didn't need to risk himself for us, but he did. And when I was afraid, he made me feel safe. She took a breath and finished. If he chooses me, I will stay by his side. The queen stood. Then it is time. She sent word to Daniel to come to the throne room. The human's choice. Daniel walked into the throne room slowly. Many nobles stood along the sides. The queen was seated high, her daughters at her side. You have completed the trials, Queen Saravel said. Now, by Valeri custom, you are allowed to make your choice if your heart accepts one of my daughters. Daniel looked at each of them. They all met his gaze without fear or pride, but instead of stepping forward, he spoke. With respect, he said, I want to ask a different question. Whispers spread through the room. Even the queen tilted her head. Daniel turned to the daughters. Before I decide anything, what do you want? Do you truly want to be chosen? There was silence. Alira answered first. I do not want to be chosen like a prize, but I believe we could build something real. Together, Velen followed. I don't want to pretend. I still have doubts, but I'm not closing the door. Sarai looked into Daniel's eyes. I don't care about titles. I care about you, Daniel smiled. Then maybe this shouldn't be a choice I make alone. Maybe it should be one we make together. The queen's expression changed. She gave a small smile of approval, but not everyone in the room was happy. Whispers of rebellion far beneath the palace. In the dark corners of Valderis, the pure-blood assembly was growing angry. Their leader, a sharp-tongued noble named Lorvac, watched the events from a private viewer. This human has poisoned the queen's mind, he said. and now her daughters speak like him. Another noble asked, "What will we do?" Lorvak's voice was cold. "End it, tonight, before the marriage becomes law." They began to prepare a plan, one that would strike at the heart of the royal family, a quiet garden moment that evening. Daniel walked alone in the moon garden. Strange glowing flowers lit his path. He needed time to think. Sarai appeared beside him. She walked without sound, like she belonged to the night itself. "You still don't know what to do you?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her. "This isn't just about feelings. It's about two worlds. I'm afraid if I make the wrong choice, it could break more than hearts." She sat beside him. "Then don't rush. We are not asking for promises. Only for honesty." Daniel nodded slowly. "You're right." She looked at him with quiet eyes. "Daniel, I'm not sure what love looks like between a human and a Valeri, but I'd like to find out." "With you?" Daniel didn't speak. He just reached out and gently touched her hand. She didn't pull away. Storm in the shadows that night. While most of the palace slept, the rebellion moved. A group of armored traders entered the lower halls through hidden tunnels. Their plan was simple: reach the queen's chamber, remove her from power, and blame the human. But they didn't know that someone had seen them. Velen, still awake in the training courtyard, heard strange footsteps. She followed them quietly. When she saw the rebels, she sent a fast signal to the palace guard. Chaos began. Alarms echoed through the halls. Lights flashed red. Guards moved quickly to protect the royal family. Daniel, hearing the sound, rushed from his room. He found Alira leading 2 guards to block one entrance. Sarai was helping an elder servant to safety. He joined them without hesitation. "We have to protect the queen," he said. Together, the 3 daughters, Daniel, and a few loyal guards fought back. Not with weapons alone, but with clever traps, distractions, and teamwork. Daniel used his engineering skills to overload a nearby energy gate. Sealing off one path, Velen arrived with reinforcements. "You're not useless after all," she said, breathing hard. "Good to see you too," Daniel replied with a grin. Finally, after a tense battle, the rebels were captured. Lorvak escaped, but most of his followers were caught. After the fire, the queen stood before her people the next morning, her daughters beside her. Daniel stood among the crowd, no longer just a guest but someone who had risked his life for Valderis. "The humans stood with us," she said loudly. "Not for power, not for reward, but for what was right. Let every house remember that." The people of Valderis, for the first time, cheered for a human. Later, in the quiet chamber, the queen turned to her daughters. "Your hearts have spoken. His actions have proven true. I will allow what comes next to be your choice, marriage or not." The daughters looked at Daniel. He smiled, nervous but hopeful. Alira spoke. "Then let us choose together, not by old rules but by new trust." And for the first time, the path forward was open, not as a command, but as a shared promise. The next morning, the queen summoned Daniel to the Hall of Echoes, a place rarely open to outsiders. The chamber was shaped like a circle, with tall crystal walls that hummed softly. The queen stood in the center, wearing her formal robe. Her daughters stood behind her, calm and watchful. "You have shown patience, respect, and a willingness to learn," Queen Saravel said. "But if you are to continue, you must now face 3 trials of survival, wisdom, and heart. Only if you pass them will the choice of union be offered." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." The queen looked to her daughters. "Each of my daughters will watch one trial. What they see may guide their choice as much as yours." The first trial, the Jungle of Winds, watched by Velen, Daniel was taken by airship to the wild southern lands of Valderis. There lay the jungle of Wains, a dangerous place where powerful storms moved through the trees without warning. The plants were alive, reacting to motion and emotion. It was not a place where strength ruled. It was a place of instinct, quick thinking, and survival. Velen arrived first. Watching from a safe observation tower high above the trees, Daniel was dropped near the jungle's edge, with only a small toolkit, a scanner, and a basic shield device. He entered carefully, moving slowly, scanning his surroundings. Within the first hour, he heard strange animal calls. He saw vines moving like snakes. When he stepped too hard, the wind roared in answer, pushing him back. The jungle didn't like sudden moves. Instead of fighting the environment, Daniel adapted. He studied the wind patterns, used the scanner to find safe paths, and marked tree symbols to avoid going in circles. One night, he built a small shelter using plant fibers. It bent with the wind rather than resisting it, keeping him safe through the storm. Vlin, watching from above, folded her arms. He's not fast, but he learns, and he doesn't give up. After 3 days, Daniel reached the center of the jungle, where an ancient Valeri symbol glowed on a stone platform. He pressed his hand to it. A beam of light shot into the sky. Trial 1 complete. The second trial, the test of wisdom, watched by Alira. The second trial was held in the Chamber of Voices, a quiet hall beneath the palace. In this place, Daniel faced a political challenge. Something even harder than wild nature. A Valeri noble family was in conflict with another over land rights. They had refused to speak to each other for years. Daniel was asked to act as a neutral mediator and find a peaceful solution. Alira sat behind a screen, watching everything closely. The 2 alien leaders sat at the table, both proud and angry. Daniel listened carefully as they spoke about betrayal, loss, and ancient promises. They expected him to choose a side, but he refused. Instead, he asked questions. He made them talk to each other, not to him. He pointed out small things they both agreed on: shared memories, similar goals. Slowly, their words softened. After hours of calm discussion, Daniel suggested a solution that surprised everyone. Instead of dividing the land, he proposed building a shared solar farming station there where both families could benefit equally and work together. The nobles hesitated, then looked at each other. It was an idea neither had considered. When they finally agreed, the Queen's advisors were impressed. Alira stepped out from behind the screen and faced Daniel. "You chose peace over power," she said. "Not many would," Daniel smiled. "Sometimes the hardest choice is not winning, but understanding." Alira nodded, more certain than before. Trial 2 complete. The third trial, the heart test, watched by Sarai. The third and final trial was held under the open sky on the Starview platform. There were no puzzles, no weapons, no debates. This trial was simple in appearance, but it was the hardest to speak from the heart in front of all. Sarai sat silently among the audience of nobles, advisors, and citizens. The Queen sat on her throne, watching Daniel closely. Daniel stepped forward. A gentle wind blew through his hair. He looked up at the 3 moons, then back at the crowd. "I didn't come here to be a hero," he began. "I didn't come to take power or earn a throne. I came because I was asked. At first I didn't understand why." He took a deep breath. "But now I see. This is not about marriage. It's about trust, about finding common ground between 2 very different worlds. I'm just one man. But I believe that kindness, patience, and respect can do more than war or control ever could." He paused, then added, "If one of the Queen's daughters sees something in me, something real, then I will stay, not for a crown, but to build something honest. If not, I will still return to Earth with respect for this place." There was silence. Then soft murmurs of approval. Sarai lowered her head. She felt a strange warmth in her chest. The human had spoken not as a warrior, but as a person who truly cared. Trial 3 complete. A hidden threat. But even as the Queen's daughters watched with new thoughts and feelings, danger moved in the shadows. A group of high nobles, angry at the Queen's decision, had formed a secret circle called the Pure Blood Assembly. They believed the human was a threat to Valeri purity. They feared change. That night, as Daniel rested in his room, one of the rebels sneaked into the palace, disguised as a servant. A poison device was placed beneath his bedset to release during his sleep, but someone had been watching. Sarai, who often wandered the halls at night, sensed something was wrong. She passed near Daniel's room and noticed a strange glow under the door. Without hesitation, she entered and pulled Daniel away just in time. The device clicked, and then hissed, releasing a cloud of white mist. Guards rushed, and seconds later, the device was destroyed. The intruder escaped but left a trail. An investigation began at once. The queen, furious and concerned, tightened palace security. That night, Daniel sat beside Sarai in the moonlit garden. "You saved me," he said softly. Sarai looked down. "You saved us all. When you spoke from the heart." They didn't say anything else. They just sat in silence, a quiet connection growing between them. The grand halls of Valderus were buzzing. Royal advisors, noble guests, and curious onlookers whispered about the strange human who had come from Earth. No one had ever seen a human in the palace before. Many expected him to be loud or arrogant, but Daniel was quiet and thoughtful, which confused them even more. Daniel walked through the palace gardens early in the morning. The air was fresh and cool. Strange flowers changed colors when he passed by, and tall trees hummed softly with energy. He felt like he was walking through a dream, but he stayed calm. He knew he was being watched. That afternoon, the queen arranged for her daughters to meet Daniel in a formal setting. A quiet chamber was prepared. Soft lights filled the room, and alien fruits were served on crystal plates. Daniel was led inside by 2 guards. He sat nervously, his hands folded in his lap. The doors opened, and the 3 daughters entered one by one. Alira came first, dressed in a formal blue robe. Her posture was proud, her face calm. Velen followed, wearing dark red armor with sharp designs. Her eyes scanned Daniel as if judging every detail. Sarai was last. She wore a soft green gown and walked quietly, her eyes looking at the floor. They sat around the table, and silence filled the room. Finally, Alira broke the silence. "So, human," she said politely. "What do you think of Valderus so far?" Daniel smiled slightly. "It's beautiful, but very different from Earth." "In what way?" Sarai asked softly. "Our world is full of noise. Valderus feels quiet, peaceful, controlled." Velen leaned forward. "Do you mean boring?" Daniel shook his head. "No, just mysterious. I'm still trying to understand it." Velen smirked. "Maybe you're not ready to understand it." Alira frowned at her sister. "He's here by royal order, Velen. Let's not forget that." "I haven't forgotten," Velen said, her tone sharp. "But that doesn't mean I have to like it." Sarai finally looked up. "Did you want to come, Daniel, or were you forced?" Daniel paused for a moment before answering. "I didn't expect to come, but now that I'm here, I want to understand why I was chosen." The daughters looked at each other. For the first time, there was a quiet understanding between them. None of them had asked for this situation either. In the days that followed, Daniel spent time with each of them, one by one. Alira took him on a tour of the city below the palace. They walked through markets where alien foods and clothes were sold. She explained how the Valeri Society worked, how every citizen had a role, and how balance was maintained through structure and order. Daniel listened closely and asked respectful questions. Alira was impressed by how quickly he understood complex ideas. He didn't speak too much, but when he did, his words showed thoughtfulness. "You are not like the humans we see in the reports," she said one evening as they looked at the floating lanterns above the city. "We're all different," Daniel replied. "Just like you and your sisters." She gave him a small nod. "Perhaps this marriage won't be as impossible as I feared." Velen, however, had no interest in peaceful walks or slow talks. She challenged Daniel to a training match. In the palace courtyard, she handed him a light practice weapon and told him to defend himself. Daniel tried his best, but Velen was too fast. She knocked the weapon from his hand 3 times. "You're not a fighter," she said, almost disappointed. "No." Daniel admitted, "But I'm a builder. I solve problems." "Can you solve this problem?" she asked, looking him straight in the eye. "You're not from here. You don't understand our ways. Why should we trust you with our bloodline?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Maybe because I'm not from here, I can see things others can't." "I'm not here to take. I'm here to learn." Velen didn't respond. But for the first time, she didn't look at him with doubt, just curiosity. Sarai invited Daniel to the quiet gardens near the palace lake. She didn't speak much, but she allowed him to sit with her in silence. Birds with glowing feathers flew above them, and the water sparkled with energy. "You don't say much," Daniel said gently. "I watch," she replied. "I listen. I feel things that others don't notice." Daniel nodded. Sometimes silence says more than words. She looked at him, surprised by his answer. Then she smiled, just a little. Maybe you do belong here. They sat by the lake for hours, speaking softly, not about power or marriage, but about life, stars, dreams, and fear. Sarai admitted she feared humans, but not him. Meanwhile, in the background, not everyone was happy with the Queen's plan. Some noble families whispered behind closed doors. They believed a human marrying into the royal family would weaken their bloodline and bring shame. A secret group of alien elites began to meet in private. Their goal: stop the marriage no matter the cost. Back at the palace, the Queen observed everything. She watched her daughters and the human closely. She saw changes happening. Alira had become more open-minded. Velen had stopped mocking. Sarai had begun to speak more. She called her advisors together. They are learning, all of them, but we must test him. What kind of test, Your Majesty? One advisor asked. The Queen stood from her throne. A trial of mind, spirit, and heart. If he is truly worthy of this bond, he must pass all three. The advisors nodded. That night, Daniel sat in his chamber, looking out at the moons of Valderus. He felt pulled in many directions. Alira was wise and steady. Velen was strong and fiery. Sarai was deep and quiet. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about marriage. This was about trust, peace, and something bigger than himself. And somewhere deep in the palace, someone was already planning to make sure this human never made it to the final decision. The planet Valderus sparkled like a gem in the dark sky, surrounded by 3 moons and colorful nebulae. It was home to one of the most ancient and powerful alien empires in the galaxy. The people of Valderus, known as the Valeri, had long ruled, with strength, pride, and deep tradition. At the center of this empire was the grand palace of Queen Saravel, a ruler whose name echoed in the stars. Queen Saravel had 3 daughters: Alira, the eldest and most diplomatic; Velen, bold and sharp-tongued; and Sarai, the quiet and mysterious youngest. All 3 were admired and respected across the galaxy. Many noble houses had asked for their hands in marriage, hoping to tie their bloodlines to the throne. But the Queen had refused every offer. She was waiting for something different, something greater. One morning, the palace filled with whispers. The Queen had called for a public announcement, something she rarely did. As the people gathered in the royal square and millions tuned in from across the empire, the Queen stood tall in her shining ceremonial robes. Her voice echoed through the air as she declared something no one had expected. The future of Valderus does not lie in the old ways. A new path must begin. One of my daughters shall marry a human. Gasps and shocked murmurs filled the square. A human? From Earth? The very idea was unthinkable. The Valeri had always considered humans unpredictable and less advanced. Marrying one was unheard of. The Queen's daughters stood beside her, their faces unreadable. Alira showed no emotion, her mind already racing through political reasons. Velen looked stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sarai lowered her gaze, hiding her thoughts. Later, inside the royal chambers, the daughters demanded answers. Mother? Why? Velen asked, her voice sharp. There are dozens of worthy Valeri suitors. Queen Saravel turned to them calmly. Because the future demands unity, not pride. The galaxy is changing. The humans are rising faster than any species. Before them, we can ignore them, or we can lead the change. Alira stepped forward. You believe one of us should bond with a human? Will the nobles accept that? They will, the Queen said firmly, because the prophecy has spoken. A being not of Valeri blood shall bring balance to our houses. That being is human. Sarai finally spoke, her voice soft. Do we get a choice? You will meet him, the Queen said, and you will decide. Far away on Earth, Daniel, a 29-year-old engineer, was busy fixing a water filtration system in a desert town. He lived a simple life, quiet, peaceful, full of purpose. He had always been fascinated by space and loved watching the stars. But he never imagined that the stars were watching him too. That evening, as he sat on the roof of his small home looking At the night sky, a large shadow passed overhead. A soft humming sound filled the air. Moments later, a sleek alien ship landed nearby. Confused and startled, Daniel grabbed a flashlight and walked toward it. A group of armored figures stepped out. One of them, a tall alien woman with glowing silver eyes, stepped forward. "Daniel of Earth," she said in a formal tone. "You have been summoned by Queen Saravel of Valdoris." "Me?" he asked, blinking. "Why?" "You have been chosen," she said, "for a purpose that may unite our worlds." Before he could ask more questions, a soft light surrounded him. In seconds, the ship lifted off, disappearing into the stars with Daniel on board. The journey to Valdoris took only minutes with advanced alien technology. When Daniel stepped off the ship, he was greeted by a sky with 3 moons, tall glowing trees, and a city made of crystal and steel. Everything looked like it came from a dream. He was taken to a guest chamber inside the royal palace, where servants offered him food, water, and rest. But sleep didn't come easily. His mind was full of questions. Why him? What did this queen want? Was he in danger? The next day, he was summoned to the royal court. He walked through a long corridor lined with alien guards and massive statues. Finally, he entered the throne room. Queen Saravel sat on a high seat, her 3 daughters beside her. Daniel bowed politely. Unsure of what else to do, the queen smiled. "You are brave to come here, Daniel." "I didn't exactly have a choice," he said honestly. That made Sarai smile just a little. The queen stood and spoke to the court. "This is the human the prophecy speaks of. He will meet my daughters and decide if his heart matches one of theirs. If unity is possible, then marriage will follow." Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, marriage?" "Yes," the queen said. "But not forced. It will be by choice on both sides." He looked at the 3 daughters. Alira gave him a respectful nod. Velen crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. Sarai didn't meet his eyes. "I'm just an engineer," Daniel said. "Why me?" "You are more than that," the queen replied. "You are human, and that may be exactly what we need." Over the next few days, Daniel was introduced to the culture and customs of Valdoris. He learned their ways, their traditions, their values. He also spent time with each of the daughters. With Alira, the conversations were thoughtful. They spoke about politics, history, and diplomacy. She admired his intelligence, and he admired her leadership skills. With Velen, things were tense. She challenged him at every turn, testing his patience. But even she began to see that Daniel didn't lose his temper easily. He listened. With Sarai, their moments were quiet. She would sit beside him in the palace gardens, saying little. But her eyes were always watching, curious. Each day, Daniel felt more confused. He never asked for this. But he was here now, and something inside him whispered that this was bigger than just marriage. It was about trust between 2 worlds. One evening, while walking under the glowing trees, Daniel saw the queen standing alone. "You're not what?" "I expected," she said without turning. "Neither is this place." He replied, "You may choose one of them," the queen said. "But remember, this is not just about love, it's about peace." Daniel looked up at the 3 moons. "Then I'll do my best to deserve it." The queen gave a small smile. "We shall see."